Tourism Minister meets Seychelles Hospitality and Tourism Association. The Minister for Foreign Affairs and Tourism, Sylvestre Radegonde, and the new Principal Secretary for Tourism, Mrs. Sherin Francis, have met with the board Seychelles Hospitality and Tourism ASSOCIATIO and SHTA to discuss the prevailing issues impacting upon tourism recovery in Seychelles, reassuring the trade of the government's commitment towards the success of the industry as well as the government's continuous efforts to work alongside the private sector. The SHTA garnered support from the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Tourism in the interest of the sector and broader community. Monthly meetings between the two departments will resume. Tourism professionals from the private sector will be invited to join a new advisory committee to effectively assist government in addressing tourism-related matters. Minister Radegonde stated at the outset of the meeting, held for the first time this year, virtually, via the online platform Zoom late last month, that his department will, within reason, support requests made by SHTA in the interest of the sector and the broader economy. Collaboration and consultation will be increased, he said, with the resumption of scheduled monthly meetings between the Department of Tourism and SHTA. Briefing the SHTA board members on the restructuring happening within the tourism department, Minister Radegonde stated that the dissolution of the Seychelles Tourism Board, STB, and merger of the two main national tourism bodies were essential to consolidate the resources of both entities while creating a desirable synergy between the two. Minister Radegonde's proposal to invite tourism professionals from the private sector to join a new advisory committee to effectively assist government in addressing tourism-related matters was positively received by the SHTA, who reaffirmed the tourism industry is strengthened when private and public sectors interact and contribute jointly to planning and strategic thinking and devising solutions to national problems. Is value for money is one key issue faced by the industry, and Minister Radegonde reiterated the department's plan to enhance the visitor experience. An assessment and inventory of the existing sites of interest and accommodation products will be conducted, and entrance fees of iconic sites reviewed to ensure that visitors are getting value for money. Employment of foreign workers was on the agenda, with SHTA members expressing concern about the lack of GOPs being approved across the sector and the strain put on the industry to obtain GOPs for workers coming from countries labeled by the Public Health Authority as red list countries. The subsequent shortage of essential skill sets in tourism establishments and DMCs have led to an increase in poaching of able employees, SHTA said, all parties agreeing the only way to achieve the objective of maximizing Seychelles staff and retaining them within the industry is to take a long-term perspective which prioritizes education and high-end training. The situation regarding local transmission of COVID and fears that Seychelles will remain red-listed in the key source markets of UK and France, affecting the anticipated third-quarter upswing in bookings, were discussed at length, SHTA expressing their concern at the prospect of further delays to national economic recovery at a time when banks are requesting loan repayments to recommence. Minister Radegonde highlighted that the government's marketing focus has shifted to alternative source markets which are open to Seychelles, as well as explaining that whilst European governments are prioritizing the health of their respective populations, the vaccination status of our local population remains key, and it remains the responsibility of all Seychelles and residents to flatten the curve by following the guidelines, complying with all restrictions and using our own common sense to join the dots between lowering the transmission statistics and increasing tourism inflows. Enforcement of certain restrictions from the authorities will be required to improve our domestic situation in terms of transmission before Europe's decision can be reversed, the minister explained. SHTA have also raised the prospect of revamping selected financial relief measures for the tourism sector in the light of the continued downward pressure on business. The SHTA board, the Department of Tourism, are set to have focus meetings to better address specific matters. Present for the virtual meeting on 25 March were Minister Sylvestre Radegonde, Principal Secretary for Tourism Sherin Francis, SHTA Chairperson Mrs. Sibylle Cardin, SHTA board members Mr. José Saint-Ange, Mr. Amit Wasserberg, Mr. Eddie Daffé, Mr. Guillaume Albert, Mr. Jean Wheeling Lee, and Mrs. Daniela Payedalis. Number Rebuilding Travel.